What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of 10x Recruiting, brought to you by MetaView. I got my boy Sile here. Sile, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm good. Nice shirt, man. Who wore it better?
Definitely me. And for those of you who can't see, Sile and I have decided to coordinate shirts today unknowingly. So today, Sile, we had Viet Nguyen on, who, by the way, I think is our second time person on the pod. Last time, I think it was our best episode of 2025. Like, Viet is the man at coming up with so much shit in AI, and he's such a builder. What were your takeaways from this episode, Sal?
Things that really resonated with me. One, because I'm starting to feel it more and more in literally, frankly, how MetaView is working. It's not catastrophic, it's a bad thing, which is I think the AI slop has now gotten to a point where it's like good enough that people end up saying that is the output. It used to be a case that people talk about AI slop and like, oh, wow, that's terrible. That's AI slop. I'm not going to put my name to that. Now the AI slop is like just about good enough in some cases that people do put their name to it. And now it's getting quite tiresome to read things with a certain tone or, that are clearly AI generated when that's not what you want. Obviously, sometimes that's what you want and that's totally fine. But in some scenarios where it's like a decision we're making and the document you're reading, I still haven't got to the point where I'm okay with that, frankly. And so and also sometimes it is BS and it still requires that human in the loop to make sure it's making sense and people can miss things. It can undo the efficacy of a meeting you're having or a decision you're making. So anyway, point is, AI slop, it's almost becoming more pernicious, I would say, as it's getting better. And then the other thing that I think it just resonated with me because we've been, working on a few things internally how we operate as a company is like, it's still the case, both when you're building an AI product, which I see obviously day to day with us building MetaView, but also when you're building AI into your workflows, which I also see obviously every day in our company, the final yard is still the hardest. And so like truly understanding the problem you're trying to solve and only stopping when you've actually solved the problem. Don't get me wrong, we move way faster than we used to because of AI, but you have to accept there's this big sort of deceleration towards the end. I think it's actually, now I think about it, it's just the other side of the AI slot sort of agenda. It's like, yes, getting to 80% is very easy, but that 20%, it's quicker, sure, but it's not 10x quicker. It's like there is real work you need to do to get that last 20% right to actually solve the problem you set out to solve. And so I think Viet's sort of framing of thinking of himself as like really problem first in how he thinks about building is one that we should all, I think, heed, because then it's clear that the job's not finished until you've actually solved the problem. Forget about whether you've shipped a document or shipped a little widget or whatever it might be. Have you solved the problem? So that resonated a lot as well.
I would say like my biggest takeaway, he used this term, which was coined by Jason Miller, which is selfish software. And the takeaway for me is selfish software is the unlock. So I asked Viet, I'm like, dude, how are you the one that's just like pushing all of this stuff? Like you're on LinkedIn once a week with something new that you're building. What is going on here? Like, how are you so vibrant with what you're building? And why are you better than this at me? And he was like, well, I'm building for myself. He's solving his own problems right now. And that was a really interesting takeaway for me because I think a lot about folks operating internally right now. A huge portion of our listenership are recruiters that are operating amongst recruiting teams inside of organizations. And they're not pushing much. They're not building a ton of their own stuff. And part of the reason why is because they're inside of an organization. They have to think about other people. You can't just launch something like Viet and then deal with these like broken things that come up every couple of weeks or like, the rough edges that haven't been polished when you're operating in a 60-person recruiting team, because everyone's going to use that thing. And you can't just like explain that 60 times every single day. And so it was a really big unlock for me, which I think we're going to see more of this. And we've seen a lot of it so far is like the people who are, the most vibrant with building. It's because they're building for themselves. They're operating for themselves. And this is like the shameless MetaView plug here is like, this is why buying off of the shelf AI probably makes a lot more sense for organizations than it does for an individual user. So we'll get into this. We talked a whole lot about like what he's building, why he's building, how you can access it, and how you can access him, which is a new thing too. So without further ado, here is my episode with Viet. This is 10x Recruiting, a podcast from MetaView. Let's get after it. All right, bro. So it's been like almost a year since you came on. And last year's episode, I think, was our top performing episode. People loved like what you were showing, what you were working on. And so I just want to start with like, it's been a year. What do you think has changed over the course of the last year?
It's interesting reflecting since was August. It hasn't even been a year yet. How much has changed in terms of like the like technology space, like within like the people space. I think it was really the turn of the year when Claude Code became like much more prevalent, and it unlocked something in like builders. So for me, like when we first came on, I was like so hyped on V0 and vibe coding and like what I could do, but it's very much a grind to get anything done. And now, like with Claude Code and how like smart these LLMs have gotten, like building has become exponentially easier, and it's only sort of allowed people who are addicted, for lack of a better term, like to go deeper and deeper and deeper and like build even cooler stuff. So I think that's changed. I think the second is while like AI, I think is taking massive strides. Also, I think people are starting to get a little annoyed with like both on the individual server side, leadership telling them like, you need to go use AI to like do better. Like they're kind of tired of hearing that. On the other side of it, leadership's also tired of seeing like their the people on their team pumping out AI generated documents. It's just slop, and then no one is reading it. It's like really impressive because it's so comprehensive, but it's so comprehensive that no one actually wants to read it. And so there's like it's interesting. We're in this interesting paradigm where AI is allowing you to do more, but then people who sort of aren't leveraging the right way are sort of generating more slop. And so there's like this interesting sort of friction between those two things.
The
Yeah.
slop thing is everywhere right now. And I don't know, like I feel like now we're 3 years into this thing. I can spot it like immediately. Every time I read like a generic hook on LinkedIn, I just like kind of roll my eyes and it annoys me. And it also annoys me like how many people are still engaging with that sort of content. I still feel like the slop taste thing, like we haven't fully acquired the taste for what actually is slop. And I think there's going to be a lot more of that stuff coming. What what are you building right now? Like what are you working on?
I'm building out a few things. So I can sort of I think share I'll share one thing that I didn't expect to like do and catch as much traction as I did, and I'll share something I built in the last like 24 hours. So going back maybe like 2 months ago, I found myself reading through like Gem's like annual report or like Ashby's annual report or whatever. Like there's so many, and I was like, man, like I'm constantly wondering, what's the benchmark for this thing? And I have to go through read all these reports. I was like, okay, well, if I'm doing this and I want to sort of like actually bring all of it together and like be able to search all of them, like why not? And so I built like this agent to go and like basically tell it, hey, I want to find all like these types of reports across the entire internet and like just like gather it for me. And so it ran and like gathered something like 50 reports over the last like 5 years. And now I have like this massive knowledge base I can work with. I can just like be like, hey, like what's the current pass through rate for engineers at sort of in San Francisco for this? And it just gives it to me. And for the first time, I was like, why people are asking these questions, and so I'm then answering them. It's like, why don't I just actually make this available to everybody? So I built this MCP with like this as a knowledge base. I put on GitHub, and now anybody can download this recruiting report MCP and just use it however they want. And it's actually one thing that's really fulfilling is there's a few milestones. The first milestone was I built something in public and shared it and shared the world and just like made free software. That was like cool. Two is somebody random who I don't know actually contributed to it. So they went and GitHub. We hear these terms as recruiters, but we actually have never experienced it. I had somebody come in and do a pull request or basically like on my project add a feature and then pushed it back, and now like there's another contributor on my open source project. And I was like, this is so sick. Like I feel like it was such a fun nerdy milestone. um and then and then sort of later, somebody then pinged me is like, hey, I want to use this knowledge base or MCP to like actually build like a small product for our team. Like we want to operationalize this internally. Do you mind? I was like, yeah, it's open source. Do whatever you want with it. And so he did that and he showed me the project. I was like, dude, this is the fact that you took my idea and ran with it and built something even better is like, this is what it's about. Obviously, I can't give away all my Legos. I still have to like pay for my kids like private school, but like, but nonetheless, like whatever I can give out, it's like it is really fulfilling to be able to open source stuff.
So, okay, so let's talk about this for just a second because I think this one's interesting. So the use case here is like, Nolan's a recruiter at DoorDash. Tony comes down and is like, why is our time to fill on, level 4 software engineer roles taking so long? And I'm like, it's not. And he's like, no, it is. I feel like it is. And I'm like, well, feel like, is not data. But I don't have industry data to back it up. So the use case for me is I could actually go query. Essentially what you built is a meta analysis, right? Of like all of these like different databases like put together. Now I can go query this thing and actually come back with data and say, well, this is actually like what the industry is saying. Is that right?
Yep, that's exactly right. And it's like you now have the power of like all this industry knowledge to like go have that conversation.
Wow. Okay. How long did it take you to do that?
While my kids were napping on a Sunday, like 2 hours.
Are you serious? So like, how are you pumping this stuff out so fast? Like, what's the difference between you pumping this out so fast and, insert XYZ company that hasn't built shit with AI?
I'll sort of take your questions in 2 ways. The first is like, how am I doing it faster than sort of the other sort of talent engineer that's thinking about this, or the other sort of recruiter who's like maybe not as deep in AI? I think one is I've built enough stuff and I've made enough mistakes and I've learned from those mistakes to allow me to sort of like accelerate sort of faster. So like now I have a very clear structure when I start working. Like first I think about the problem. I actually define like a proper problem statement. Like what am I trying to solve? Second is then I look at, okay, what data do I need to actually solve this problem? And then I think about the user experience of like, okay, when I think about the user experience or every step of it, and then now I have this like a pretty clear idea of like the problem I'm trying to solve, the resources I need to solve that problem, the expected experience and the outcome, and I just like work built from there. And then I kind of like I sort of iterate on it, and yeah, I think sort of like I've built a structure over time to be able to do that. And then the other thing is because I'm building this as independent software developer, it's I don't have to worry about scale. I don't have to worry about a lot of things that companies do, right? Like I think about some things I've built. I think about some of the things I've built, which we'll get to in a second. That like it's taken. I worked at Gem for a long time, and it took us a long time to build some of these features because I don't have to think about my enterprise customer and my SMB customer. I just have to think about me. Jason Miller, like kind of, I think, coined this term as far as I'm concerned, is like selfish software. I'm building selfish software. It's just for me. And this open source thing, while I am thinking about the overall user experience and who else is using it, like I'm just fundamentally just building it for myself. And if other people find it useful, fantastic. If they don't, that's okay too. And so I think that's sort of like the thing. And then, actually, one other thing about the sort of this project is, I think the thing I'm probably most proud about in terms of like the build is how do I keep it up to date? And so I built an agent, which, by the way, building an agent is just like typing. It's just another prompt. I was like, hey, build an agent that basically runs every Monday and tells me and basically finds new reports and automatically add it into this repository. So it basically it's generative. It like just keeps running on itself. And then it just tells me if it fails, I'll get an email that it failed. But otherwise it just runs. And then also as part of my report, it tells me like what people are like querying, how often is it being used, what are some like the trends of like what people are talking about? Is there any like trends that are happening in the industry that people are curious about? And so I'm getting these insights over email every Monday. Which is like kind of just fun.
That's okay. So a couple things there. One is like the term agent, I feel like has been bastardized and it scares people. Like it's just like a cron job. It's just like a thing that like if you just tell it to do it, it'll just like do it at this time every time. There's a cool piece of software that came out recently. I had a friend tell me right before the launch, and so she was like, "Do not tell anybody. This is like our secret advantage." Called Town. Have you used town.com?
So you told me about it and I have yet to look into it. In fact, it sounds like it's OpenClaw, but like a much like sort of user friendly version.
And so I told Cassie at Craft too, and she was like, this is OpenClaw. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not like as technical and nerdy as you guys. So it's like OpenClaw with a friendly interface to where like I don't actually like have to go build and run shit and worry about, all of my iMessages being leaked to the world. So but on there, you could just build these sorts of things that run automatically. So the one that I use is, and it took me literally 3 minutes to send this up, is every day look at my calendar, look at all the people who I'm talking to, go pull their phone numbers from the calendar, give me the context, and then at the end of it, put together a contact card for each person. So I have one click to download all of the contacts into my phone. Because I do most of my stuff is with text. I text all my kids. Like I'm building like that sort of, and so it's just done. Versus I was doing it every single time before, and now it just shows up in my inbox every single day. That's the kind of stuff to where it's like very low lift for me, but also like not insanely high leverage, but decently high leverage of like that automated away probably 60 to 90 minutes of work per week if I'm talking to 30 new people. And now I don't even think about it, which is
Dude,
amazing.
I'll give you an extension to that, like to build.
Please.
Is obviously you're getting your contact card, so have it pull like the public LinkedIn profile, and then also then have it give you context on the companies they've been at, and what stage they're at that company. That way, like you have more context going in these conversations. You're not asking like, oh, what does your current company do? What stage was that? You have that sort of at your fingertips, so it gives you like a sort of more rich brief in the morning, like going calls. But actually, you want the I can actually share this. I can show you the report that I get every Monday.
Yeah, I'll
Give you a quick peek under the hood. So basically, it runs this query. So like, okay, this is like literally like the what it's searching for, right? A query run, and then it found these pages. So Ashby's trend report, blah blah. Like these are all like pretty standard, and these are reports it found. So Appcast created like this is not something I've ever seen before. Like Appcast created a 2026 recruiting marketing benchmark report, and like it basically tells me Mercer did, Smart Recruiters, like unless this shows up on my LinkedIn feed, I would have never known like these things are happening. Right. And so basically it's getting all these reports and then it decides like, okay, which ones are actually good? And then it'll inject it. And then it'll basically tell me like, okay, like your metrics. So number of reports in the MCP now are 59. And then these are sort of what people are asking. What's AI and talent acquisition, recruiting benchmarks, etc. And yeah, most referenced topics. And so this gives me a view into like where the recruiting world is at in a kind of a slightly indirect way. But it's like a quick read for me. It's 30 seconds I get every Monday morning.
Okay, so I saw you launch this, and I'm gonna be really honest with you, which was like it linked me to GitHub, and I was like, too much for me. Like I have no fucking idea what's going on in GitHub. Like, tell me why that is a not smart thing for me to do, and why it's easy for me to just follow that link and actually get data out of this.
I think it's fair, actually. I think it's actually fair that it's intimidating. Like GitHub in general, like until you actually start doing stuff in it, it is a little intimidating, admitting. And but I think part of it is a lot of things are scary until you do it, until you learn how to do it. Yeah, it's not. Well, we both have kids. It's like they refuse to try something until they try it. Like, man, this is really good. And it's the same idea. It's like you just gotta try it and start doing stuff. That's like one. But then two, as a builder, like I actually had that same idea. I had the same thought. It's like, should I just build actually standalone application that people can query directly?
Exactly.
That just like has MCP as the backend. But then especially with how a lot of like builders are like sort of if I'm thinking about this like for us by us like sort of framework, it's like the people who are like me who want to use this want to basically be able to plug this into like their own Claude instance as an MCP, and they just have this as opposed to having to go to like this one-off like point solution that I built. And so the reality is probably I need to build both. I need to build sort of like for the people who don't want to plug this into their sort of Claude instance, and the people who just want to use the standalone app. And it wouldn't be hard for me to build, but it was like more of like nap time was up. They came downstairs, so that was the end of the build. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
So it is a fair point.
Thanks for protecting my ego.
Yeah.
What else have you built during nap time?
Not quite during nap time. So I had I was coming back from San Francisco on Monday. I was on the cab ride there. I was thinking I'd come out of this client meeting. And by the way, for folks who don't know, like I have since rebooted Talent Collective. And so I'm mostly doing talent engineering, sort of consulting, but also every once in a while, like friends will ask me like, hey, do you like know a good person for this or that? And I'll like take on a contingency search. And so I have like, having been in the industry for 15 years, especially for recruiters, I have a very rich network of like people I could ping. And so, but for me to be able to figure out who to ping, I have to then go through LinkedIn's like free search filters. And it's a pain. Like, and it's hard for me to like, and from memory, I can only think of like maybe a handful of people for any given search. And so my thought is like, I need to find a way to operationalize like my network. And so I before I left my client's office, I requested LinkedIn to send me my export. I got the export, and they gave me the CSV of all my connections. By the way, if you don't know how to do that, like that's you should do that. Just go Google that. And so I get my CSV, and my thought is like, okay, I can. And by the way, the thing that again, what I'm trying to solve for is like operationalizing my LinkedIn to allow me to find cans quickly within my own network, so I can generate referrals fast. That's what I'm solving for. And so I have like the CSV of all my connections. I know if I go into Clay, I can basically plug into Clay and have it enrich sort of my LinkedIn. Enriching meaning like adding more context. So the export gives you like the name, LinkedIn URL, et cetera, but that's kind of it. Like it just doesn't tell me like what's in the LinkedIn or where they're at. And so you can use Clay to enrich it, but I don't want to just pay for Clay's enterprise version for this one use case. And so I was like, well, Clay I know uses People Data Labs, and a few other APIs to sort of enrich the stuff. And so I recently heard of this company called EXA, that basically also provides people data. And so I used EXA to then, I ran a test. I had EXA and People Data Labs basically run 10 people and like to see what will come back. And People Data Labs was slightly faster, but EXA was able to give me like the body of the LinkedIn of like, what people actually have under their title, company, et cetera. And so now I was like, great, EXA is like my solution. And then I had to run it. I had to run and basically enrich everybody. Like it was like something like 9,000 contacts. And so now I have this really rich database of everybody. And my thought is like, okay, well, this is good. And by the way, at this point, I'm still waiting to get on my flight. Like it's from the time I had the idea of leave my client's office to, and I'm not a lounge guy. I try to get to the airport, I guess, like as soon as like I don't want to walk into my and so like at this point I'm like still like waiting for my flight. And so the next idea I was like, well, if I'm it's not important, it's not enough to just get what people say what they do, but also like when they're when I as a recruiter I'm thinking about, okay, what companies are they at early stage startups, or kind of are they at sort of scale up startups, etc., right? And so that's so important. And so what I then did was I had EXA also then enrich all the companies they've been at. And so now I have this kind of this multi sort of faceted database of like where people are at, or sorry, what they've done on their LinkedIn, what companies are at, what stages they're at, which then contextualizes sort of that information. And so now I have like effectively two really big tables. And then I'm very much nerding out right now. And it's like you basically have these two tables, but then you have like different types of databases. This is like what you call a relational database. And then you have like these vector databases. Vector databases allow you to like sort of call it do more meaning-based queries. So like if I want to say, find me, one of my clients right now is a health tech company, and they want to find clinical recruiters. We're having worked in One Medical. I have a lot of those. And so I was like, cool, I want to find somebody who's worked in clinical recruiting, but then also has worked at a startup, because a lot of clinical recruiters come from like big health systems. Like that's not going to be a fit. And so I just like I want someone who has 5 years experience, clinical recruiting, has worked at a startup, and it's what's interesting is like everything I'm saying, people on the call are probably thinking, well, like Juicebox can do that. Why wouldn't you just use Juicebox or MetaView or whatever it is? Like the fact that the reason why is because when you use someone else's product, while you can change things in the UI, you lose complete control over sort of the logic and all these things. The most important thing is when you build it yourself, it acquires your taste. And that's what's most important. And so like one of those things is like a really simple thing is, I never want to, like, for these searches I'm doing where people are paying me a lot of money, like I'm never going to show them somebody who has less than 5 years of experience. Like it's just like the fact of the matter. And I apologize for anyone who has less than 5 years experience on the call, but like that's just like the reality. And the other thing is like, also I want to like have an average tenure. MetaView and Juicebox can also do that. But now I'm like, okay, well, as a recruiter, I actually like I want someone who has like this amount of tenure with this many years of experience, but actually tenure may matter less if they have at least like one or two like long stints. And so I can actually program it to be like, if they have at least one long stint of like 3 years, the average tenure could be 1.5. Whereas like if they don't have a long stint, the average tenure needs to be 1.8. Like it builds in my taste. And like it also then like for this particular search, I also like, hey, don't show me people who are currently sourcers because that's not what I'm looking for. Because it'll return like recruiting as like anybody in recruiting, but sourcing is like that's not what I'm looking for. So it actually starts like actually bake in my taste for any of these given searches. And then furthermore, like the future of this, then this is like what I'm probably most excited about. The future of this, as I like start to go through these candidates, it's learning who I'm saying yes to, who I'm saying no to, and it's like acquiring sort of like my point of view on these things because I'm giving it digital context. And then like this is like where the magic is that I haven't quite gotten yet. So this is like probably what I'll build tonight is like I want to build like sort of a signal machine. So for my entire network, I want to see what they're doing on social. I want to see like what they're posting, what they're talking about. And with all these sort of marketing APIs that exist now, I can see Nolan Church just posted something 30 minutes ago about this thing. And this is like what Nolan's like thinking about right now. And so over time, I'm building this knowledge graph of like what everyone is doing in my network. And obviously you have LinkedIn, but like LinkedIn's algorithm only shows like certain things, but like what are they doing on GitHub? What are they doing on X? What are they doing on all these areas? And so I'm effectively building like this, like, I don't know, call it Cerebro for any of the X-Men fans, where I can like literally track every single like person in my network and like what they're up to. So that is like what I want to build towards.
Yeah, and this is like to go back to the selfish software point. Like that makes sense for you. This is your own network, right? Of people who you've connected with on LinkedIn. That is your data. So you're downloading that data. Then you're saying for all these people who I've at some point interacted with in one way or another, right? You have now warm connections, but it's essentially useless data if it's just living in LinkedIn. Because on the filters, like I use them all day long. And to your point, if someone's asking me for a specific role in a specific location, like I can do decently well. But then when you start to add in the nuanced layers of, well, I need actually like early stage, so seed through Series C experience, it falls apart. Like you completely lose the ability to do that. And then if you're using other tools, you're essentially not querying your own database, you're querying the internet. And then it loses the value of, well, I can get this person to respond to me because we've had some sort of touch point in the past. The counterfactual to that is if even if you're on like a 30-person recruiting team, it's really hard to build these things because you have to optimize for the entire team versus optimizing for yourself.
100%. One thing it's because now I'm in consulting and who knows how long, so it's fine. I've been doing this for now 3 months and I'm already sort of trying to get like feeling the gravity of like pulling me back into in-house, but I'm like really enjoying like being independent. And but this idea, like I'm building it on like my network. Now imagine this, Nolan, like if I go into a company and I have every single person in the company give me their connections, and I enrich it. I have now built the sort of the richest referral network that exists. Now a recruiting team can literally just source through your company's connections in sort of the easiest way, right? And I'm not scraping LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn's giving me my data, and so it's like if I know anyone who's tried to do this, the tallest order is getting everyone to do it, but how much are these companies paying in recruiting fees? And like a CEO comes down, it's like, we're not paying recruiting fees anymore. I just need everyone to go do this. We're going to have it all hands where everyone's going to do this right now.
Didn't Teamable try and do this? Wasn't this like the whole idea around like Teamable software? And if I recall correctly, like part of the problem is like these companies just like can't get big enough to actually like go build the software. Like it's not like valuable enough for a company to that's exactly the purpose and the use case for why you should build yourself.
I think the thing with Teamable is, yes, so I agree. Like building yourself there's a ton of upside. I think the thing with Teamable, the reason why it may or may not have worked is a large part of it is because technology has changed. Like being able to do semantic search and like get actually like sort of meaning based search or querying, it didn't exist before. And so, and also the other idea I had was like, if I go into a company and do this, I can see like, okay, there's 10 people in our company who's connected to this one person. And like the person probably has pretty high signal. And then I can also sort of now layering in sort of this marketing data I'm going to introduce. It's like, is this person active? And also you can layer in things like, is this person interacting with our content, right? And so you're talking about this person's connected with 10 people. They're already interacting with our content. They're extremely high intent. Like we need to get in front of this person. And so can you build sort of this generative system that then just feeds a recruiting team on how to do this stuff? Like, MetaView, go build this, go productize it by all means, like go make money. Like I actually do think to doing this well and productizing it, and then also managing like the change management in the process, I actually do think like this is like the sort of one of the most effective ways we'll be able to recruit in the future. Because again, I think going back to your original question, like what has changed, like people are getting hit up so much with like AI content. Like I use it, like, Juicebox or MetaView has like this AI sort of prompt like token that you can like go like, hey, like write me like a hook that I can plug into my message. And like it's become like some people are better at than others, but like some are like really obvious. And so if going outbound, if the response rate is only going to like go further and further down as AI like actually gets better and better. Interestingly, like your company's internal network becomes like your most valuable resource for recruiting. And how do you operationalize that? And if you're not operationalizing it, it's sort of like it's sort of you're leaving money on the table.
So Viet, it's like a lot of people are going to listen to this and be like, how do I work with you? So how do people like, what types of engagements and shapes of engagements are you currently working on?
I'm just kind of getting started. So originally I started consulting back in 2020 for a brief second. And then I was consulting with Gem. They're like, hey, we love the work you're doing. Do you want us to join us full time and actually run professional services? Like, sure. I was like, I love at the time, like Gem was like sort of the at the time, Gem was very much
The darling.
the belle of the ball, the darling,
Yeah.
right? And like that was before anything else. And so I was like, and I love the product, so it was an easy decision for me. I also like love Steve, and so all that to say, like that was like sort of my first go. This next go, I was like, I wasn't sure exactly what I want to do. Like I'm taking like a pretty wide range of like engagements. I'm taking on sort of talent engineering focused stuff. I'm taking on a few like R4R sort of like searches, and I'm taking on. I have a buddy who's having me help him hire 4 deploy engineers, and so it's like I'm taking a wide range just to see like what brings me energy. And I'm finding myself going back to like I love the system stuff, but I realize that you know there are a lot of fractional heads of talent out there. And the issue is that no one needs a fractional head of talent. They need a recruiter. They just want you to go hire them. And so
Totally.
I've realized that, and I think I'm actually better at being a consultant on the talent engineering operation side of things. But like the TAM is much smaller because there are only so many companies that actually need recruiting operations. And then two is, but interestingly enough, a lot of companies, there also is a subset of those companies that know they need recruiting operations but aren't ready to pull the trigger on someone full time. And so that's where I slotted really well. Is like if you are like a company that like we know we need ops, but we are not ready to sort of build it full time, or like don't have the resources to build it, like I'll be your sort of your interim sort of head of rep ops.
Take a vanilla company though, Viet, and like, so when I hear talent engineering, I think of a lot of potentials and a lot of things we could do. How do you come in and then think about like designing the roadmap?
Yeah, I'm actually in the middle of that now with the new client. So I think I spent a bunch of time like doing discovery to talking to like recruiters, coordinators, like head of talent, like what's happening today? What's painful? What is meaningfully blocking you from actually doing what the business needs you to do? Because like a lot of people will throw like, man, it'd be really cool if we did this. Like for example, like a friend was like, hey, can you build me like a sort of a Tinder app style, like a Tinder style app for applications so I can just give it to my founder to do it. It's like I can. But is that the thing that solves like your like biggest like business problem? And like that's where I like push, right? Because like I need to show value not just to like my stakeholder, but also to like their boss and their boss's boss. And so I'm thinking about like what does like their boss care about, and then so that's what I'm trying to like sort of identify. And so even for one client, like it maybe it's not as obvious, is one of the things that recruiters, hiring managers, and finance are all like really struggling with is triangulating sort of what the current state is for any given rec, because they use Rippling and they use an ETS, and data lives in like 3 different places, and each of those stakeholders are living in sort of in their own homes, if you will, and they don't really talk to each other, and so they're constantly confused of like what's the state of this rec, and that was actually creating a lot of friction between like the head of product and the recruiting team. And so like, how do I help them like actually smooth this over so they have like a sort of a more symbiotic relationship? And that was actually the most valuable thing beyond like, hey, can you fix our offer process? Like, and I was like, is the offer process working? They're like, yeah, but like, it just requires a lot of clicks, and we're like in between Ripley and Ashby. I was like, but it works, right? And they're like, yeah, it works. I was like, great, that's not the one, right? And so like, I'm like helping them. I'm forcing them to like really think about like, how do you optimize for like the business, as opposed to like building like the cool thing. And actually, that's one of the things I find that people internally, as they're like trying to sort of talent engineer within their own orgs, they end up sort of like going towards like the shiny thing, and the thing that sounds interesting or whatever it is, and it's great, you can build it, but it just doesn't stick. And then while the learning process is valuable, you still have your boss asking you like, okay, well, you guys just did this hackathon, like you just took all the recruiters off the phones for the last 24 hours. What did you guys build? If you can't show that you're actually adding like business value, they're like, you guys aren't doing that again. So I think it's like, I think it's important. I think the business fundamentals, like what are you doing to solve for like the business problems, is still very like front and center.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like a lot of depth into like what you're currently building right now for companies, because as someone who has raised VC and has built product, I made exactly the mistake that your customers are making, which is, oh, go build the shiny thing. Go build the thing that you think is cool, but you're starting from the wrong place. If you're starting from first principles, you're working backwards from like, what actually matters to leadership in the business? That's it. And if you start from there, you never get to like a swipe app like Tinder. You get to like, oh, how do we actually make this? How do we make time to hire go down? Or how do we make product, whoever the head of product is, how do we make their life easier when they interact with recruiting? How do we make sure everyone's operating off of the same song sheet? And oftentimes those things don't end up looking like apps. They look like workflows in the back end, but it takes a shit ton of work to go create those workflows. And if you've never done it before, there's a lot of landmines that you're going to step on.
So two things. One is, when I go into a company, they're like, oh, can you build us this thing? And what I've learned over the last few months is that the value that I add is not necessarily to go build stuff. It is going to understand the problem and then find the right solution. The right solution might be a workflow. It might be just like a flowchart diagram. It might be building something. It might be helping them, tell them like, hey, this is a good product you actually need to buy. Like, don't build this, right? And so that, I think that's what I really enjoy as a consultant, is that my job is to help you solve the problem. It doesn't really matter how. And I think that sort of mindset probably could be applied sort of if you're internal too. And then the other thing is, funny enough about the Tinder app, or the Tinder style app, actually then end up building it for myself, because again, selfish software. I have to review like all the people I've generated through like this